Hey, today we're going to start working on the electric fans for the radiator. So to begin with, I guess I'll tell you I'm running an LT1 F-body radiator with the factory LT1 fans that are attached to the radiator. I zip tied two transmission coolers to the front of it. The 4L80E really wasn't liking the single transmission cooler I had on it last year, so this year I'm hoping to keep it cool enough. The radiator has always stayed cooled. It works really well. There's a cat on the car, and to begin with, I took this plug out of the passenger side rear cylinder head. Maybe you can see it a little better. Takes a $8mm Allen wrench or whatever you got to fit that hole, and then I had to use a bar on it to help break it loose, but it came right out. It looks like somebody's had it out before. From GM, they typically have a copper O-ring around it, and somebody has put some sort of a paste on this one. So anyways, it's out. You'll never use it again, so I'll just set it on the shelf. Okay. Now, to control the electric fans, I have bought the Painless Gen 3 truck dual active dual fan relay, part number 30118. As you can see here. Alright, so I've used this kit before on the first LS swap I ever did, and it worked perfect. It is set up to work with your AC system also, so you have you'll just have the temperature sensor that screws into the factory hole in this head, and then you'll have, let's see, there's 3 relays in here. I don't remember how this works, but one of them is controlled by the AC system. However, there is no AC on this car, and I'm just going to wire it up to where both fans work off of the temp sensor, and there will be no AC input. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. So I guess first of all, I'll show you where the plug is. Wiring's still a mess here, but there's the hole that you'll be putting the sensor into. And then here are my LT1 fans that work really well. I know they work. I used them last year. So I guess I should explain, if you've been following along with the rest of the build of this car, I set this up to where you did not have to tap into the factory harness. This is a totally factory uncut harness from a 99 Silverado. So you can make the factory computer run the fans, electric fans on here. Even though there were not electric fans on a 99 Silverado, you could pin the computer and then program it to make the fans come on. I'm not going to get into all that. I wanted to stay with a factory uncut harness, so that's why I bought this kit. And I was just going to show you how to install it, or how I'm going to install it on this jewel of a 86 Grand Prix. Now the cool thing about it is, whenever I go to pull this engine out, I will not have to mess with the fans. Won't even have to unplug them. Don't even have to pull the radiator out to get the engine out. I don't really have to do anything. It's just convenient that you don't have to mess with the wiring from one engine to the other than taking the temp sensor out of the head moving it over to your next engine or next cylinder head. All right, so moving on, let's get this ball rolling. All right, so the first step, there's only 7. Mount the relays under the hood in a convenient location as close to the fan as possible. Use the 1/2-inch self-tapping hex screws to mount the relay bases. So they're talking about the screws that I used up because I dropped one and had to use the others, or dropped 2 of them. I don't remember how many. So I was trying to figure out a good place to mount it, and it was more difficult than I thought. I was going to mount it over here, somewhere around this area or straight to the fender here. But I didn't want it to be directly under this hood line for water to drip into it on top of the relays, because it's not a weather pack relay. They're just open. And then I didn't really want any wiring visible down this fender, or not necessarily down this fender, but from here to the other side. I didn't want like to start a rat's nest of wiring, because this is all wiring for it. So then I decided to take out this panel, this filler panel that's right here that actually screws the core support to this front cover. I took it out for 2 reasons. One, so I could get access down below it. And you would ask, well, why would you do that? Because then you can see where I mounted the relays, which is still right at a hood line where rain is still going to drip on top of it, because I'm not smart enough to know any better. So I mounted them here, so that way I've still got access to them. They're not in the engine bay, really. The hot wires can run to this factory relay box for the 99 Silverado, and then the wiring for the fans can come right through this gap right in here and then plug into the fans. You don't have to mount them here. Mount them anywhere you want. I think you can mount them inside the car even if you wanted to. Could have ran the wiring that way. Anyhow, moving on. So yeah, let's see if I can pull one out. There's a screw right here. It's a self-tapping screw that they include. So you screw that into wherever you're going to mount it. And then there's a ground wire that comes out right next to the relays. It's labeled ground. And I just sheet metal screwed that one to the frame. Pretty good ground there. So I got to plug my headlight wiring back in, and we'll move on to the rest of it. Alright. Where's my wires? Okay. So this pink wire, it is labeled ignition switched 12 volts. So obviously key on power. So doesn't matter, you can hook that thing up to a toggle switch, just as long as you remember to turn it on, right? I fortunately had some empty spots down here, just enough empty spots to find a good hot wire. So down here in this bottom corner, this green connector is power on with the key on. There wasn't a wire in that hole, and the rest of the wires I just took out and took one of them and put it in that place. Now, unfortunately, most of the wires in this connector had 2 wires come out of each contact. So I thought, well, maybe later on I'll put something else on here too. So I just took the other one, folded it up, taped it up, and it'll be there for future use. So I'll just connect this wire to the pink wire, cut to length, and that's taken care of. Now the red wire is labeled flux capacitor. That's not true. It says battery. This is directly from the starter, which the cable goes directly to the battery. So there's this spot I can hook it to, or this one here. So I'll probably hook it to probably this one. All right, so I'm getting ready to do the first wiring connection. And Painless sends these cheap butt connectors that you can't use these. You can't. If you do, you're asking for problems with moisture and stuff like that. So, but obviously the actual contact inside the butt connector is still good, but you want to put some sort of a sleeving on it to help keep the elements off of it, right? What I have done is I just take a screwdriver and push out that contact in there. So now I have this, and I'll crimp the wires, and then I'll put a heat shrink sleeving over top of this. So then I can get rid of that, and it'll be good. It'll be real good. All right, so here's this fancy positive terminal deal here. If the camera would focus. Anyways, you see what's going on. And there's this 70 amp fuse that they send along. And it just goes over that like so. And then you screw your hot wire, battery wire, screw that on both ends of this fuse. And then that takes care of that. That's the only fuse in the whole system right there. There's holes in this thing where you can screw it to whatever. I'm not screwing it to anything since I'm out of the self-tapping screws, but I am putting it in a place where I can zip tie it to some other stuff. It's going to be under the fuse block, so it's never going to be seen anyways. It will be next to all the other fuses. Alright, so I skipped a pretty major step. I think it was step 2. You have to put in this sensor. This is the temp sending unit. It has an O-ring on it. In the instructions it says not to use any kind of a thread tape on here. Obviously the O-ring is what's going to seal it, but they say it uses a ground to the head through this sensor, so you don't want to affect that in any way or take away from that ground. So I'm going to put just a little bit of grease on this O-ring. If you ain't got grease, just spit on it. It's amazing what a little bit of lube will do. Get off of my car. Alright, the sensor is in. Ooh. I don't like the way the O-ring is squashing out of the hole. You can barely see it there, but I checked the hole to begin with to make sure there was nothing in it and to let the O-ring fit in there, and the hole looked good, so I'm going to let it go at the moment. I'll just have to check it for leaks later on. It is very close to the exhaust manifold, obviously. Kind of had a hard time getting in there to get it tight. Should have just took the manifold off. So, if you're wondering what that sound is in the background, let me show you. Now you know. Alright, so I've moved on to the temperature sensor, the wiring that actually gets put into here. It's got a long ways to travel, all the way up to the front of the car, all the way up there. But luckily for me, the wire was able to reach. So this is it here. That sleeving does not come with the Painless kit. That's just something that I did. These connectors are the only things they give you. Put a piece of heat shrink on here to keep this sleeving from moving around. And I got that sleeving from wirecare.com. And I've got it here. Let's see. It is this Tech Flex tight weave, 1/8 inch. An eighth inch just is big enough for 2 wires. It's pretty tight. So, but I had a lot of it, so I decided to use it. And then I found this heat sleeve here that I will put up close to it because of the manifold being right there. And they say that there's a black wire and a black wire with a white stripe. And Painless says it does not matter which wire goes to which connector here. So, and now because of my sleeving, I've got them so tight together, I got to put them on together. Like so. Sleeving will go up here like that. And then I will just zip tie that into place, make it look presentable. And then I'll have the, we'll move on to the fan wiring. Now there is an extra wire for the AC. Okay, so here's the way I understood it. So the temp sensor reads 185 degrees, and it kicks on both fans. Now the AC wiring is for whenever it goes to, you turn the AC on, it turns the fans on automatically no matter what temperature it is. So it's a pretty nice feature. However, I'm not using that, but I didn't cut the wire off. All I did was I looped it up and I put it into the harness for future use. Now, we did this on another car where we hooked up a separate toggle switch here under the hood so we could turn the fans on while we were in between rounds. And it works quite well, just as long as you don't drain your battery. But so I may use it for that later on, where all I have to do is hook a toggle switch up to it, supply power to it, and it'll kick the fans on. Or later on down the road, I can use this harness for something else, for on another car if I wanted to. So I didn't get rid of the wire. It's still there. It's just looped up in the harness. Okay, now just got to wire up the fans. Fan 1 and fan 2. And I don't know that it matters which fan is which. I guess I should say that the fan 1 and fan 2 wiring they are taped together and labeled. So in case you're wondering, whenever you go to wire these fans up, they give you the contacts to crimp onto the ends of the wiring. As you can see, I've started on it here. But I didn't want to put it in the weather pack connector until I knew which side does the red wire go on. Well, as you're looking at it from this side, the power wire, the red wire, goes to the right side. I just put a couple of gator clips and some wires on it and tested it. And these are puller fans, so make sure they are pulling air through the radiator towards the engine. And it'll be like that on both of them. Power on the right, and it should work just fine. Alright, so I just made a really big mistake. This wiring, I put this nice sleeve on, put this heat shrink on it, looked real good. But I forgot one thing. This does not plug into the fans like this. They plug in upside down like that. So now my power wire is on the wrong side. I don't have any other way to fix it other than I can cut this off, flip the wires around, and reconnect them, or I can cut it off. And luckily I have a spare harness laying here with cat hair on it that I'm going to cut off and just put it in place of it, and then it'll be done. Kind of aggravating, but you know, that's how it goes, right? So first of all, I put my sleeving on, and when you put it on, you got to put it on like that and then squeeze it back like so. I've got my sleeving on, and this is just to keep the wires from chafing on a bunch of stuff. I also have this heat shrink sleeving that I like to put on, and to do this right, you're supposed to put it over top of this. So I'm going to put that on right now. And these wires are just long enough to reach the fans on the driver's side. So the ones I made the mistake on will have to go to the passenger side once I cut it off and redo it. So I put my sleeving on back there. Heat shrink sleeving is way back. And let's see. Take my tape off here. Let's cut this. Now Painless does a really good job at making wiring, but they do a horrible job on the directions. Now, I say that because on this connector, there is about 15 ways to make mistakes of putting this on. Now I know that because I think I've made all of them. So they leave you totally in the dark on how to do it. And really, I think all they needed to do was just send a, just put a picture on the paper showing how it goes. So, all right, power side is on the right, and this will be on the bottom side. I guess I probably ought to double check that, oughtn't I? Ooh. This does go on the bottom side. It faces down. Your hot wire will be on the right side. So don't make the same mistake I did. Put it together like this. Push it all the way through the connector. These contacts are made to pull back into this connector, and then they snap in place. So I'm going to look at it and see about cutting these to the same length. All right. They are a 14 gauge wire, I believe. I'm going to strip them back about 3/16 of an inch. Or a little, you can go more. But the wire actually crimps onto the small part of the contact. So it'll look like that, if you can see it. The insulation actually gets crimped onto the back side of this contact. So there's two ways to hold it. Okay? Break one of these off. They give you 5, so you can make some mistakes, but in my case, I made too many. These are the Crimpers. I think I bought these from Summit. They're pretty handy on these GM weather pack connectors. I would definitely recommend getting a pair. I don't remember who makes them though. So I did this wrong. I use a lot of different sizes, and sometimes what you need to do is start with a big size to get it started, crimped, and then work your way down. Won't always go real smooth. Really, these contacts aren't real great because they don't have enough material there to wrap around your wiring to crimp it real well. It is crimped really good. I mean, they're not coming off, but it's not great. Crimp the insulation part of it, and that's done. So that, slide your rubber seal back in. I believe that's correct. Now, also check out our Facebook page. It's just facebook.com/DivineSpeedTeam. We've got some pictures of stuff up there and some wiring diagram information. Hope to put some more wiring stuff on there. Alright, there it is. Got it rolled up. Let me get it back to where I want it. Slide the heat shrink up there. Try not to heat that sleeving up, that snake skin, it'll melt. The heat gun will ruin it in a hurry. That looks pretty good. Now I can plug it in, run the wire. Connector on the fan is underneath the motor, so they're clipped into place. It's good to go. Now I just got to fix this other end, make it shorter, plug it into the passenger side, and this deal is done. So hopefully that helped you out, and when I get this thing running, I'll have a video of it working as it comes on. Actually, I'll probably wait until the car is running before I finish this video. Well, this got out of hand in a hurry, didn't it? Like the last time that you seen it after I put the radiator in and put the cooling fan wiring in. It was a couple months ago. It's been that long since I tried to continue this video. Anyhow, I was doing some data logging on the car, trying to get it to run a little better. It's running a little lean, and I finally heard the fans kick on. They're both working. So the painless wiring setup is working like it's supposed to. So that's good, right? Okay, now they've shut off. Funny, when they come on, it actually pulls the motor down for a second. It pulls that much juice. So there, it works. Got any questions, just yell at me. Hey, today we're putting in, gosh dang it. Let's see here. Son of a gun. Stop video. Stop recording. Recording stop. Shoot. What the fuck?